This is one of our standard Lunch and Learn series that we run most Wednesdays at noon. And we have started running this both virtual as well as in person at the DC Library, the Martin Luther King Library in Chinatown. Thank you so much for being here. We have a lot of content to cover in 30 minutes, so we're going to move through pretty quickly. But first, just a couple quick things so that everyone knows this. We are recording this session, and so you will be able to get a copy of this later. If you do have questions, and I apologize that my slides came down. If you do have questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. And, let's start telling you exactly who we are and who's here today. So my name is Kate Merrind. I'm the program manager for the Innovation and Equitable Development Division at DSLBD. I'm going to ask Shannon Taylor to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shannon Taylor. As Kate mentioned, unfortunately, I do have my mask. I am in person at the library with some of our other attendees that are here. I specifically coordinate the Made in DC program. So happy and excited about this training today, as so many of our maker and creative businesses are definitely gearing up for this holiday season. I will be monitoring the chat. So throughout this presentation, if you guys have any questions, any comments, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will make sure that those are teed up or answered throughout the course of this presentation. But thanks so much for joining us today.
Shannon, thank you so much for that. And I'm just going to two other if we can just make sure that lines on mute. All right, anyone else wants an echo? Okay, hopefully, okay, the echo seems to have been resolved. So if I'm going to shout out two more members of the Inno.ED team who are on the line and will also be in the chat. We have Camille Nixon, who is our project manager for access to capital. She can help and support you as you are seeking capital for your business, particularly if you are seeking capital to help increase your inventory during this season. Definitely feel free to reach out to Camille and drop some notes in the chat. And we have a newest team member who is just joining us now as well. She just started earlier this week. Her name is Cynthia Golson. So welcome, Cynthia and Camille. But let's keep it moving. So for today's agenda, and you're going to see this is a pretty heavy PowerPoint. So I won't be able to say everything that is on the PowerPoint slide, but I will be talking about what's here, and you'll be able to get a copy of this slide later and go deeper into it if something is of particular interest. But today we're going to talk about a few facts that we know about what's happening in the market this year. We're going to talk a little bit about inventory, shipping, and markets that you might be interested in. And a lot of what we're going to focus on is how to hone your sales strategy. So a sales strategy is not discounts, but it's how you are making sales. And that's all about getting to know your customers, thinking about what your calendar and schedule is during this very busy time. Where are you building your partnerships? If you are interested in it and you're thinking about it, are you going to pay it forward or participate in the season of giving? And what does all that mean for your reputation as a business, for being able to build your brand as a business, and really starting to think about the fact that we always know that January is one of the worst sales months ever after the big push in the holiday season. So what does that mean for your business, and are you planning ahead for that? So let's talk about some of these facts. So you may or may not know that some of the biggest holiday markets have already closed their registration. So we know that we are doing this in September, but many makers and many other businesses actually start their holiday sales prep in June or July. Depends on where they're going to be, how much inventory they need to have. Another fact that might be helpful to know, we know that international supply chains of all kinds are continuing to see disruption, and that could affect your business in many different ways. It can also affect your competitors in many different ways. There may simply be pieces of the product that you're going to produce that you can't get, or that is significantly more expensive, or hits a delay that you're not expecting. So shipping delays for your supplies may be happening, and shipping delays for if you are shipping products to your customers may also happen. Through all of this, we know that there's going to be a number of different frustrations for customers as they are looking to make sure that they are able to purchase everything that they're looking to purchase for their holiday season. And so that's just something to keep in mind, that some of these systems are not operating what they were operating at a few years ago. One of the biggest industries that is bracing for supply challenges and really hits hard during this holiday season is the toy industry. You can follow this in the news, but this may be something, depending on what your product is, that you want to keep in mind. If the large toy manufacturers are having troubles getting product and supply out into the market, there may be a gap in the market and one that you could consider filling locally. The other thing that is true, both for everything that you're going to be doing, but also for everything else that consumers will be purchasing, is that prices for many goods are up, but not necessarily wages. And so what does that mean? And just start to think about your market. If they have to pay more for everything everywhere else, but they don't necessarily have more money, what does that mean? And, you know, I think within that, and this will get to our conversation about ethical giving during this time, many families and many small businesses are facing significant hardships during this time. There have been a lot of evictions that have been happening, and people who are facing mounting debt in different ways. And what does that mean for you as a local business owner as you think about the communities that you support? And it can mean lots of different things, but we know that that's one of the things that's happening right now. Within all of that, let's talk about the first thing to think about as you think about your holiday sales season, which is inventory. And so if you are making something or if you are selling something, thinking about how much inventory you need to have is one of the hardest things. And it can be even harder if you have a seasonal or perishable product. So if it is inventory that you can't really sell again in February and March, what is that going to mean? And so even though it can be hard to figure out the amount of inventory you need, because you could overestimate or underestimate, the actual biggest mistake that you could make here is if you overpromise and underdeliver. So if you underpromise and overdeliver, that's a great way to go for your customer base. But if you overpromise and underdeliver, that can harm your brand for a long period of time. So we're talking a little bit as you think about inventory and what it is that you might need to have. One of the strategies that you might want to think about is something called scarcity marketing. And I know that you've seen scarcity marketing, but you might not have think of the term scarcity marketing. And that means you're being very clear and transparent with your customers that there is a limited supply of a product. And there are two different ways I'm going to talk about how you can do this scarcity marketing, but you can also Google scarcity marketing and think about a lot of other tactics. So if you announce a limited edition product, you only have made 100 of these. Once all 100 are gone, there will never be any more. Perhaps they're numbered. You see this in art, you see this in small batch products. You could consider doing limited edition, and that can help drive up consumer interest and consumer demand because they know that as soon as that run is gone, they will never be able to get that again. So then instead of delaying a purchase, if they like it, they may be more interested in purchasing right away. And that's the same thing about being very clear about low inventory. As people are looking to purchase gifts or products this season, if they are trying to make lots of decisions and shopping around, if they see something they're really interested in, they know that there are only 2 left in stock and they may not be able to get that again later, it gives the same thing, but it gives you that option to be able to come back and bring that back into the market later. So those are just a few things to think about. As you think about that type of marketing, we'd also suggest, however, be careful not to go overboard. The biggest thing that you want to make sure you don't do in scarcity marketing is have your customer think that it is not realistic or that it's not true. And so if you announce a limited edition and then announce another limited edition of the same thing, that can really harm your brand. So make sure that your customer base really actually sees what the truth is behind what you're doing for scarcity marketing. Let's talk about shipping. I don't have time or didn't have space on here for an image, but I want to tell you about an image that I saw all over Instagram last year from many small businesses that do decide to ship. And it's this image where they carefully communicate with their customer, they carefully package, they take everything to whatever provider they're working with to ship. And then for 2 to 3 weeks, there's zero information. And so the customer's frustrated and they're frustrated and there's nothing that they can do because it sort of goes into this black box of like shipping, it's on its way, but they don't know when it's going to get there. And we know that this is very hard for a lot of small businesses that ship during the season. And one of the things that we also know is very true is that larger customers can bargain their way into being the priorities for these shipping companies. And that can be really frustrating. So there are different ways to plan ahead to recognize the reality that you might be looking at if you are thinking about shipping. Some businesses just decide that they're not going to ship or that they're going to have a shipping deadline. And so you may say you have to have your orders in by December 1 if you want to make sure that this is going to get there on time. There are other different deadlines that you can set, but as much that you can share about timeframes and as much as you can share about transparency of how your process works, that is going to be helpful because it's frustrating for consumers not to be able to get the product that they're looking for, but it's also really frustrating if they just don't know what's going on. And so as you think about this and think a little bit about shipping for your products, if you are doing this, another thing to really think about is that you may need to have a policy for refunding or returns If someone is, and you might need that even if you're not shipping, but what is your policy about refunds or returns? If something is never received, if a package is stolen, what does all of that mean? There are some different ways that you can do that. Maybe you can't refund a full product, that's just the way that it is, but maybe you can give a small gift or a percentage off their next purchase. Just think about different things that you can do to help make sure that your customers remain happy with your brand, even if you run into shipping challenges, which are quite challenging and common. One thing that you can think about if shipping looks like it's going to be difficult, but you want to be able to reach a broader marketplace. There are different things that you can do with gift cards and subscriptions. So some customers are looking to get that product right away so that they have that gift to give and they have the instant gratification of that product. Many people are looking for that. But there is an increasing market in which people are looking to buy gift cards or to buy subscriptions as gifts. And one of the reasons that people are looking at this, you know, if you are a last minute shopper, this can be a really good opportunity to be able to make sure that you have something without having to go out and shop. Another thing that can be a positive trade-off for you if you consider doing a subscription box and launching it during this time is that you will get the funds up front and then you will be able to invest that in inventory with pre-sales. It's functionally pre-sales. So one of the things to think about if you do a subscription box is to think a little bit about making sure that whatever introductory or holiday price that you might set is going to cover your costs. Sometimes we see people will have that introductory or short-term price and then they'll raise the cost later. But that will just be on new customers. So think a little bit if you when to do a subscription box, make sure whatever it is actually going to cover your costs. And then one more piece that we're going to think about is some of these big factors before we get into talking about your sales strategy is just thinking a little bit about markets. One of the things that we do with Made in DC quite often, and we'll talk about in a moment, is we help support a lot of the in-person markets that are across the district. We support that by doing calls for vendors. We support that by some light technical assistance for those who are doing markets. You know, we're not a full experts in how to run markets, but we've learned from a lot of them, some of the best practices and some of the challenges. And so really happy to share that with anyone who is looking to operate a market. What is always interesting every year, there are some markets that, as we just mentioned, start planning in June or July. There are always a few markets that we see pop up at the last minute. And so no matter where you are in your process, you may be able to get into a market if you're still interested. Now, as you think about that, some people have fantastic experiences in in-person markets, and some people have terrible experiences. And some of that can be due a question of, are you prepared? And some of it can be a question of, is this the right fit for you for a market? So as you start to think about the market opportunities that you're looking at, we'll start talking about setting goals in a minute, but think about what goals you have for being at market. You might have a goal of making a certain amount of sales. You might have a goal of signing up that many new Instagram followers or on your email list of people who are interested in you. You also might just be interested in seeing if you can do it and if you like it. Some people just really enjoy the market experience, and so that might be your goal. There are a lot of considerations, and one big consideration after when you're thinking about location, your table displays, are things going to blow away in the wind? Are you going to have problems with inclement weather? Are you going to have issues with theft? But another piece that's really important is, are you prepared to be on your feet and engaging with the public for long hours, potentially in the cold? And so those are all things to think about as you think about whether or not you want to be at some of these markets. They can also be fantastic opportunities. A lot of people sell out at markets, and it's a great way for many people to be able to really hit their sales numbers during this season. So if you are interested in hearing about calls for vendors, we already send these to all official Made in DC members. To be an official member of Made in DC, you have to register on the This Is Made in DC website. But if you are not eligible for the Made in DC program, but would still like to receive the calls for vendors, you can feel free to sign up at this link here, and I'll see if Shannon can drop that in the chat. That's an Eventbrite, just so that you can put your email address in. And we'll say, if anyone does have a call for vendors that they would like to put out to DC businesses, please feel free to send that to us at Inno.ED at dc.gov or at Made in DC, made.indc at dc.gov. So we love being able to put this call out. Sometimes we can put it on Instagram. We often are able to put it out by email so that more and more people can be connected to these market opportunities. So with that, we're going to switch up a little bit and talk about strategy that you might be thinking about for what we'll call a sales strategy. So a sales strategy, again, it is not necessarily discounts, but it is a written plan. It's part of your marketing plan. And what is your marketing strategy for your business? And so a sales strategy, you should have one for your entire business, thinking about where and how you're selling things and how you're marketing things, but you can develop one specifically for the holiday season. And what you're really thinking about in that is how will you achieve and how you increase your sales. And so within that, as you have a holiday specific strategy, let's talk a little bit about what are some of those elements that you would put in a strategy. Some people may have very formal business plans that you've put together, and so you already know how to adapt a strategy to a holiday strategy. If you haven't, these are some of the things that you should think about putting into your strategy. The very first thing is to start with what are your goals. Your goals could be specific sales numbers. Your goals could be specific numbers of engagement that you're going to have. Your goals could be whether or not you have fun and enjoy this season. There are a lot of different goals that you could set, and only you can set those goals, but you can't write a strategy until you know what those goals are. Another piece that should come into your strategy is knowing who is your target customer. Who do you expect is going to buy what it is that you're going to be selling? And do they have different needs or different things that they want now compared to where they might have been a few years ago? For many people, a lot of things in life are changing. And so your target customer may be in a different place and may be thinking about different things right now. Another very important question, and this ties back to what markets you might want to be at, is how will your customers find you? Are they going to find you online? Are they going to find you because they're coming out to a big holiday market and they'll be able to see your products on the table? Just think a little bit about that. People might not find your website unless there are other ways that your website are advertised. How much inventory do you need? We already talked a little bit about that. But also, how can folks buy from you? Sometimes if you only have small and limited ways that people can buy from you, you might miss out on sales. But if you go too wide in how many different ways people can buy from you, it may be hard for you to manage. So you may want to push everyone to an Etsy page. You may want to push everyone to come to in-person markets. There are just different ways thinking about how people can buy. And within how people can buy, specifically, how can folks pay you? Can you take credit cards? Are you in a space where you're going to take Cash App or Venmo? What are some of the different ways that people can pay you? Will you take checks? Will you ship? And then it gets a little bit more into the marketing portion of the strategy. Everything about marketing is a question of whether or not you have customer satisfaction. So how will your customers be happiest with your purchase? It may be the quality of your product, and maybe the timing of when things are delivered, and maybe the entire overall customer service experience. It could be other different things that make people really happy with the purchase that they've made. As we'll talk about in a few minutes, it could also be because every time they purchase from you, there's a portion that goes into some form of giving. So there are different things that can make your customer happy, and you want to think, what are those things that are going to make them the happiest? Also, you should have contingencies if things do not work out. Things can definitely go wrong, both in in-person markets, definitely in shipping. And so what are you going to do if there are problems? What are your contingencies? And the biggest thing that you're always looking for in marketing is how do you get repeat buyers and recommendations? So we just talked about a lot of things. And the variables really are endless for what you can put into a strategy. And so even though I just told you you should think about a ton of things, you also have limited time before you're going to be operating this plan. And so you still can't get lost in those details. It's going to be really specific to your business as you set a strategy. For some people, less is more. And so for other people, more works for you. And so as you think about everything that you need to detail out this year, you may also say, I have a this year goal, and there's something I want to do, but I'm going to push it to be a next year goal because I just don't have time to do it this year. We know that some makers and some businesses really get overwhelmed during the holiday season because their products are doing very well, but it can be very harmful reputationally if you are significantly back ordered during this season and people are not expecting to be back ordered. So it's just something to keep in mind is what is going to work for you and what is going to continue to protect and promote your brand. I think everybody knows what we're about to talk about right here, which is, 2021 is very different than many other years. We do have a lot of lessons from 2020. We do anticipate that, versus years prior, there will still be fewer in-person markets, but there were a lot of in-person markets last year. But we also are hearing that the shipping delays might be even greater than they were last year. At this period in time, people might need even more cheer and even more connectedness. I think one thing to really keep an eye on, and I think you are probably already thinking about this in your own life in different ways, what is happening with the way that people are feeling about back to school that will still be a space where a lot of people are with their families and thinking about that as we move into the holiday season. And I think also, where are your customers in thinking about what does the holiday season mean for their health and safety? Having known that there was a rise last January and February. And so where are people? What are they thinking about? Do you think they're going to come out to markets? Do they want to connect to you in a different way? And just really starting to hone in on your particular target market and thinking about what it is that they need. Some consumers are going to have more to spend. A lot of consumers have had savings during this time. They haven't been commuting to work, but there are others who are in dire need. And so we're seeing that split within the market. And we're also seeing, and we see this every year in different ways, but we've been seeing a lot of support for small and local businesses from the consumer market. And I think you can really play into that, because people do recognize that some of the businesses that they've known and loved for years are no longer with us as they have faced challenges during this time. And so definitely, keep an eye on that, and keep an eye on making sure that people know to support you. And I think the biggest thing is, obviously we are all in a learning environment. Everything is continuing to change. You may have been doing markets for years, but you may be doing something differently this year, even than last year. And the big question is, have you gotten feedback and advice from your customers about the things that you're thinking about doing differently? And you can totally get feedback and advice if you want to ask for it. And so, what does it mean to ask? If you have an Instagram, you could just ask on your Instagram. You can call up regular people that you have had be customers. You can send out a survey. There are different ways you can get really creative in asking people for feedback. And, if you haven't asked people for feedback before, it might seem a little nervous, but what we have always found is that people like to give advice, and they like to provide feedback, and they like to know that their feedback is valued. And so if you are thinking about doing something differently than you've done before, definitely ask previous customers, ask potential customers, ask other small businesses and people that you know what they think about that change. And, as you look to get feedback, you can make feedback into a game or a promotion. If you want to do small giveaways for feedback that people have given you, but you also just want to look at what other people are doing in the marketplace and see if that plays into what you're doing. One of the big pieces around marketing, which comes into a marketing and sales strategy, is engagement. And so engagement isn't just selling a product. Engagement is finding a way that you are having an ongoing conversation with your customers. Social media makes this a lot easier, and there are different strategies that you can do on social media. It doesn't have to be social media. You can also host small events, or you can look at ways, that you are just regularly reaching out either by phone or otherwise, if that's where your market is. But what you really want to think about is, how engaged are consumers with your brand? Because the more that they're engaged, the more that they remember that your brand is there, the more they think about shopping with you, and the more that they recommend it to other people, because you're top of mind, because you're always engaging. And so within that, we're going to talk a little bit about how to tell people about your schedule during the holiday season. And again, I'll say this because when we said having a sales calendar throughout this time, sometimes people get nervous and they're like, I'm not going to discount my prices. A sales calendar isn't about discounting your prices. It is about telling people what the calendar is of events for how you'll be doing things during this season. And so what you can do is say, we're going to hold certain events, certain promotions, or we're going to have deadlines. These are different, and these are days that we're going to be closed. And so the more that you have a reason to reach out and tell your customer base about different things in your schedule, it's just another reason for you to reach out to your customer base. And so it can also do something else that can be really helpful for you. But here are just a few of those dates that that folks might have, and you might add others. So we know that every year people for Thanksgiving, particularly for food businesses, do have that catered. There's usually a pre-order cutoff date. We all know about the very big dates that happen right after Thanksgiving for shopping. There's a big collection of them now. But sometimes small businesses hold holiday parties throughout the month that's after that. Or they might have limited time collaborations. And so you might collaborate with another brand, but you're only going to do it for 2 days. So you're really advertising to people that you're going to do that promotion, then it's coming up. There are other types of markets and ordering deadlines, shipping deadlines. There are the big holidays themselves. And then if you are doing stuff for 2021, like a subscription, you might do early bird pre-sales. And you can add a lot more into this calendar. These are just some of the standard things, But if you think about what your brand is and how you want to be communicating, it's really making sure that people are seeing your brand and that they are seeing those reminders from you often. It does something else too. So it serves this dual purpose of providing customer engagement and awareness, but it also helps you stay on track. Because it can be an incredibly busy and overwhelming time, particularly if your sales are going very well. And so sometimes, particularly if you are just in the mix of a ton of work, the calendar can give you a gentle nudge so that you can prepare for the next surge. So that you can think about, how do I make sure not only am I ready for today, but I'm ready for the next 2 to 3 months of things that are happening. And through all of this, we do want to do a quick word about mental health. We do know that it is always a topic of interest and something to keep an eye on. We also know that these last couple of years have been very lonely in many different ways for a lot of people. We know that entrepreneurship is often very lonely. And so one of the things to think about is, if that's happening both to you, that may be happening to other people that you might be able to partner or collaborate with. And so one of your goals for this year may just be having really great collaborations with other small businesses. It can help boost your confidence, it can help boost your well-being, and it can help boost your brand. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind. But let's shift. I know we're getting close to the end of time. We're going to say a little bit about ethical engagement in the season of giving. So there are a lot of different ways, if you as a brand want to think about how you want to give back, that can bolster and support your brand. If you are giving back to the community in different ways, make sure your customers know about it. And some of the different things that we've listed here are some very prominent ways that your customers can get engaged with it. But you can get creative and you can go beyond that, so long as you are being honest with your customers, transparent, and really letting them know what it is that you're doing. There's a really common model called buy one, give one. And so you can always have your products have buy one, give one, or you can have an option for people to add on a buy one, give one. That's a great way for you to let your customers give back without having to hit the overall profits of your business as much. You can have pay it forward packages. And so, that's similar to the buy one, give one, but that's someone's just simply purchasing from you and that product is going to go to somebody else. And so that might be similar to an angel tree or a donation, but they can do this through you because they know that you will be then gifting that piece that they have purchased from you. For some people and for some products, you may find that pay what you can work out very well. And if you want to think about a pay what you can strategy, definitely feel free to reach out to us at Inno.ED at dc.gov if you want to talk about that a little bit more. Pay what you can only works if you feel like you can cover your costs. But for some products, you can pretty quickly and easily cover your costs. And then you'll find that different people will pay different amounts for pay what you can. So that would mean you're going to offer a product or a service, and then you're basically just asking people to name their own price. You could choose to offer installment payments, depending on who your market is. You can also make sure that if you have partners who are doing great things in this space, that you're advertising that and they're advertising what you're doing. So, we know that small businesses give back to their community so many different ways. Definitely include your customers in that and include that as part of the message of who and what you are, however you decide to give back. And this really helps set the tone for your business. And so within this, setting the tone for your business is something that you choose to do. And one of the reasons to really think about how you're setting that tone is if you are stressed, if there is too much work that you're looking at, that can set a very different tone for your business than if you have set the right amount of work and that you feel confident and comfortable that things are going to ship on time, or however you've structured things, that you feel confident in how it's going to work out. So if you are not feeling confident, that's going to set one tone. If you are feeling confident, that is going to set a very different tone. And so if you set a plan together that helps you feel that confidence, that's really going to help you build out those reputational pieces that you need. Because as much as you are very interested during the season, or should be very interested in finding those sales, this is also a time to be building your reputation to support you throughout the year. The holiday sales season is the biggest amount of sales. And so what you not only want to do is achieve sales then, but if you are a year-round business, you want to think about how are people going to come back to you in March and May and July, and make sure that you become a regular business that they think about. And that is all about your reputation. That is all about how people really enjoyed the product and the service, and they really wanted to stay engaged with you for one reason or another. And so Partnerships can also play into that idea, but really think about not only how do you build your reputation, but how do you collect that contact information? Are you building an email list? Are you adding followers on Instagram? Are you doing this some other way so that you know how to reach out to your customers later? Lots of different ways to do it, but we want to think about what is your way to do it so that you know that you are continuing to be able to reach out and have a reasonable reason to reach out to your customer base throughout the year. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is starting to think a little bit about January. So, it is such a busy season in the holiday season, and January ends up being the worst sales month of the year. And so it is good to plan ahead. Some businesses close in January and February, and they take a vacation and they come back when that's done. It depends on what your business is, whether or not you can do that. But you might need to plan to cut your costs during that time. Or you might be able to think about, if you're thinking about subscription boxes or gift boxes or something else, there may be something that you have done to engage or sell in this coming fall and early winter season that really keeps those customers engaged in early 2022. And so think about that. What does your business look like in January and February? And so if you can be collecting information at any time from your customers about 2022 and what they're thinking about, that might help you head off what that sales slump might look like. And so, I'm going to give one example of a way to think about this. I don't even know if it's the best one, but just to deepen it in a little bit, if you are looking for ways to engage your customers, you might be able to engage them in their New Year's resolutions or ask them what their winter plans are. Find different ways that you are keeping that conversation going. And so, another thing to think about, even though it's not a huge piece in the holiday season, for a lot of people, December 31st is their end of the year taxes. And for some people, they are looking to make end of the year donations. So if they are working with you and working through you to be able to make donations that you're making as you give back, that may be another benefit after that big holiday, but really looking at the beginning of January. But remember, the holiday sales season does go all the way through to January 1st. So you may also be thinking about what are some of the New Year's things that you would be doing to engage. So I know we are just a little bit over time. I am going to go ahead and stop our recording now, but we will stay on for a few minutes and answer any questions. Thank you so much for being here.